It's time for the Onyx News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Onyx News Podcast, Margie Kay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Onyx News. I'm your host, Margie Kay, and we are here every Friday evening. This evening, I have a good show for you. I have actually two guests tonight. For the first half of the hour, Tyler Kiwala is my guest, and the second half, Mindy Tautfest. So stay tuned for the entire thing. Join me in the chat. If you are listening to this on a digital radio app, you might want to go to YouTube and look up Onyx Network. Click on the live show and join us in the chat, if you would. Tyler Kiwala, oh gosh, I've known him for several years. He is one of the founders and creators of the Journey to Truth podcast and also the Journey to Truth conference, which is held in Illinois every year. And that is one of the best conferences around. So make plans for that for 2025. Also, he is an author and he's a filmmaker and a speaker. So welcome to the program, Tyler.
Thanks for having me. And it's really weird to hear someone call me an author. And people don't know I'm writing a book right now. So it's kind of exciting.
Well, that's very interesting. Your first book, tell us what it's a little bit about. Not the whole thing, just a little bit.
Right. So it's going to explore a lot of my paranormal and extraterrestrial experiences and just a lot of my awakening. But then it gets into a lot of the deeper concepts and potential involvement in like government programs on other timelines. It's kind of out there, but it's stuff that's been happening to me for years that I don't talk about, and I haven't in fear of ridicule, but I've come up with so much supporting evidence for some of this stuff. And it's just time to put it out. We interview people all the time and they share similar stories. So I think it's, time for me to throw my hat into the game and let's see what happens. But I'm really excited about it.
Well, you have been really focused on secret space program subjects. How did you get interested in that topic?
That was like what I call a snowball of synchronicities. Just one thing leads to the next. And I was led to a show called Cosmic Disclosure years ago on Gaia TV that was interviewing secret space whistleblowers. And my jaw hit the floor when I heard about this, because we've seen all the UFO TVs or shows on network television, right? And they just always leave you hanging. There's more, but they just don't give you any more. And then I heard about this, and it was like the missing puzzle piece. And I'm like, this makes sense. There had to be more to it. There has to be more to it. And when I started learning about it, it was resonating so deeply. It like fundamentally changed me. I knew there was something to it, and I became obsessed with researching it. And it was kind of really responsible for my awakening, I would say. And I just went down this rabbit hole, and haven't came out of it. I mean, the more you research this stuff, the more real it gets, the more you try and debunk it, the more evidence you find, and the scarier it gets too, because some of there's trees. We're talking about treason. This is a national scandal. People have blood on their hands covering this stuff up, as you know. And, what we see now with this UAP task force, and, we're getting surface level disclosure, but they're trying to figure out a way to release this stuff without telling on themselves. Because if they told on themselves, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's counterintuitive. So, it would be a lot of finger pointing if the truth ever came out in its entirety, because a lot of groups don't want to be responsible. They don't want to tell the public that, yes, we've known about this all along. We've been lying to you. So they're trying to figure out a way to do it and rolling it out as something new. So, but the secret space program goes very deep, and I'm starting to learn about a lot of the companies involved, and the deeper I go, the more I learn. And it's becoming more and more tangible, and it just can't be explained away anymore.
Well, as you know, I had some strange experiences in the military that lead me to believe that there were some things going on that I still don't remember, but I know something happened. With missing time being a part of that, 3 months of missing time. Um, so in this journey here, how many people have you spoken to now who may have been involved in that program?
I would say we've probably interviewed maybe 10 to 15 people who claim to have memories, but out of those 10 to 15 people, I would say there's maybe 5 of them that have really solid testimonies that just can't be touched, meaning they have military credentials, tangible evidence to support their claims, and a testimony that just stands on its own. Some of these guys have amazing recalls, high IQs, females and males. I mean, there's women too. And it's there's some people, really credible people, I would say, that we just can't ignore. So we have to dig deeper and look into these people, and we either have to believe them or not. But the evidence supports their claims. And it's interesting. You have 3 months of missing time, and one of the most credible whistleblowers that we know is Niara Isley, who was also in the Air Force, and she had 3 months of missing time, specifically 3 months. And what she learned that happened during that 3 months was it wasn't the greatest. It was not something that anyone would actually want to remember, but she did remember it. And it wasn't a very pleasant experience for her, but it was the truth of the matter and what's happening, on this planet.
So your talk at XCon in October is going to be about the secret space program and
Yep.
obviously evidence that you've uncovered. That's going to be fascinating. I know you're working on a new documentary right now. I guess we'll talk about that first. What's your subject matter on that?
So rewind just to the presentation. So what I'm going to do at the conference is a history of the secret space program.
Okay.
And we're gonna go all the way back to maybe even as early as the late 1800s. And we're going to start piecing together some evidence and some things that happened that paint a picture of the shadow government, and then how the secret space program spawned from the shadow government. And there's a trail, and it really paints a picture. And I'm going to take us from then to current time. And the whole goal is to make people scratch their heads and say to themselves, oh, there's really something to this. And that's exactly the premise of the documentary, except we're not going to give a history of the secret space program in the documentary. Actually, the term secret space program is not even going to be in the title. It's going to be more geared towards the skeptics. We're trying to reach a broader audience, and we're interviewing people that have credible stories with military credentials and tangible evidence. Like I said, some of the most credible people we can find, and we're trying to bridge the gap. We're not even going to jump off planet in this documentary, meaning we're going to focus on the Earth-based testimonies, the things that are happening underground in these military bases, places that we can go and get boots on the ground footage and evidence. And we're going to be focusing on the stuff that people can grab onto and say, okay, there's something here. We don't want to scare people away by sharing these off-world testimonies. We got to even help the masses understand that something is actually happening here. So we're trying to do something that's never been done. And it's an ambitious project, and it's a lot of traveling, a lot of money, and a lot of time. We've been working on it for a few years now, but it's finally starting to come together, and we're really excited about it.
Now, your first film about the Cahokia Mounds, let's discuss that a little bit, because that's very interesting. We have talked about it before, but let's just take a few minutes. Give us an overview of that film.
So that, as the audience may or may not know, you're also in that film. And it came from me living in the area and growing up near these mounds. And really, you start going through an awakening, and all of a sudden you start thinking about everything a little differently. You have to basically rethink everything that you thought you knew. Go back to the drawing board. And I just, those mounds kept showing up, and they kept coming up and coming into my awareness. And I was like, there's something more here. And the more digging I did, the more I realized that this was a very significant ancient site that had a history that wasn't being told. You know, we have the museum history, the mainstream history, but it's very surface level, and it stops at Native Americans. And I'm like, there's something more here. And you know, the more you dig, you find giants start showing up in the story, extraterrestrials, and Egypt. You can't, like, ancient Egypt artifacts and Egyptian artifacts. If Southern Illinois is literally dubbed Little Egypt. There's Pyramid Lake, there's Cairo, Illinois. There's a lot of towns in Southern Illinois named after Egyptian cities. So there's actually, turns out that there were Egyptian artifacts that were found in the area as well. So how would that even be possible unless we've been lied to for a very long time? And we're starting to figure out there's an Egyptian history in Sedona, Colorado. I mean, in the entire North America, actually.
The Grand Canyon, yeah,
Grand Canyon, yeah. So we're trying to tell a new version of history, and the mounds was a great place to start because I knew a lot about them. I live right here, and I was able to get some amazing drone footage and some fantastic interviews, and we were able to just kind of open that door for anyone who wants to go further, you know.
Yeah, when you go to the mounds, well, you really have to go in person to get an idea of the scale of these things, especially the big mound.
Yeah.
It's just insane, the size, and to imagine that people actually built that by hand, you know, a long time ago. You know, the timing on that is questionable, but a long time ago, people are doing this by hand. It's kind of like thinking about building a pyramid. You know, when you think about a task like that, there had to be a serious reason why that would occur.
Well, so there's a really interesting theory there. So the base of Monk's Mound is actually bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The base of it is, and it's arguably not a mound but a pyramid. Actually, they could all be technically identified or classified as pyramids because of the pyramid technology. They're literally placed on ley lines, as you know, and it's like a vortex energy that they're utilizing for whatever reason. You know, we can explore that. But Dr. Samir Osmanagic, I always say his name wrong. He's the he's the archaeologist who discovered the Bosnian pyramids, but he came to Cahokia. Unfortunately, we didn't get him in the documentary, but they did some actually test samples of the soil on Monk's Mound and some of the mounds, and they realized that it was actually there was different layers of different sediments and stuff like that, and it was all strategically done in order to prevent erosion, meaning it couldn't have just been random buckets of dirt that was piled up. So there was actually an organized effort to make sure that these pyramids didn't erode. And it's like, I mean, that's huge. That's huge evidence that these were more than just, mounds done with buckets of dirt.
Well, certainly would have had to be done by someone with some knowledge of that type of thing.
Right.
And when you think about thousands of years ago, when they possibly were built, yeah, it reminds me of Egypt and South America, and we still don't really know what the technology was, how these things were built. I wonder also, what you're getting into is considered to be kind of sensitive information, and I know that you have been removed from some places that we won't mention, because the terminology is conspiracy theory, I believe. But have you had anything else happen, like surveillance? Have you had any threats, any indication that the government or certain people don't want you to talk about these things?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually going to be a big part of my book too. I during a certain period of my life, I experienced a lot of targeting that got very real, and to the point where, things were happening. People basically, without sounding crazy, I believe people were coming into my house. They were definitely going through my vehicle. There was, black vans, black government vehicles, white communications vans. It was kind of like the gang stalking I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about this stuff without sounding crazy, but because it sounds crazy when you get down to it. But there was a point where I couldn't write it off anymore. There was something going on, and I even believed that direct energy weapon was used on me at one point, and because of the way I got, actually on a few occasions, I'm pretty certain that something was pointed at me because there's no other explanation to explain what happened to me. And one time I broke out in full body hives, and I've never had hives in my entire life. And it happened when I was in walking the trail in Jefferson Barracks, which is an old military base. And there was this van, this white van, with this guy in it. And I saw him when I came around the first corner, and it just gave me that bad feeling. I took note of it, but I didn't, I just kind of ignored it, but I noticed him. And then this van, he would follow me around. So like the whole trail, there's different parking lots, and he would go from one parking lot to the next. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And all of a sudden my left thigh just like started burning, like somebody, like it was on fire. And I couldn't explain it. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And it started itching, and it just kept getting worse. And I looked down, and I had these welts and just these hives. And by the time I got home, the hives were spreading all over my body. And I don't know how else to explain that away, aside from the fact that I think that guy in that van was pointing some sort of direct energy weapon at me.
Yeah.
And it was right around the time where I was probably getting too close to let's just say, a military insider who was sharing some very, I guess, classified information with me, or probably stuff he shouldn't have been sharing with me. But I was spending a lot of time and getting closer to him, and I don't think somebody liked that. So
it seems that these government agencies know what you're doing. They probably have all of our phones tapped, all of our internet. They know where you are and who you're talking to. And it seems that those of us who have been investigators for a long time, we've all had some experience with this.
Yeah.
And when something is very, very sensitive information, they don't want it out. And they do things like hit you with a directed energy beam weapon.
Right.
I've been hit with one myself. And I think that's a warning to back off.
Yeah, it is. And they were going through my vehicles to the point where I would wake up and my car doors would be open. Everything would be gone through, but nothing would be taken. This happened twice at home. And then one time after I got hit with that, that weapon at the park, I came back to my car. It was unlocked and gone through, and I left my wallet in the car because I lock it up in my center console. I don't lock it in the center console. I just put it in there. They didn't even take my wallet. It's almost like they just want you to know that they know that you're, what they want you to know, that they're watching you,
Right.
And
right.
I got back to my car, and the seats were like all the way reclined and pushed back and readjusted. It's like they just mess with it. But then my dog's collar started going missing, and that's when I got like concerned. My dog's collar. I was on a trip. I came back, and my dog's 10 years old. Never once has her collar slipped off or anything. It just never came off, and it was gone. And I asked my dog sitter. He didn't know what happened to it. He's like, "No, I was looking for it too. I wondered, and couldn't find it anywhere." So I bought her a new collar, and went to bed that night. And the next morning I woke up, and her new collar was gone. And I'm petting her. She's licking my face in the morning. Like, where's her collar? So I looked through the whole house. I can't find the collar. You know where it was? It was in a bedroom that had been closed all night. The door was closed all night, and the collar was sitting in the middle of a bed in the room that the dog couldn't have got into. I mean, we're talking like some next level stuff. I don't know if a person came into my house or this is like some sort of entities. I don't know what's going on, but either way, like, somebody has to explain that to me. I don't know what it means, but how they did it, but it happened.
Yeah, I would say my gut feeling is that was a message as well, so that you would notice it and obviously in the middle of a bed in a locked room is something you would notice.
Right.
Some people, me included, I'm going to ask you if you've had this happen. You're asleep at night, you wake up and you hear rustling sounds, papers moving, things being moved around on your dresser, but when you look, you can't see anything. But you know someone's in there.
I've not specifically that, but things like that. I can't say that I've heard anything. Actually, I take that back. Now, so you got me thinking. One time I heard somebody going through my change. I keep like my change in this little box on my dresser.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting outside my room and I heard somebody going through the change in my room. You can't mistake that sound. And I got up to look and, there's nothing there. But I mean,
Right.
yeah, that's really interesting.
Right. Yeah. I just, that happens to me every once in a while. And my gut, just using my third eye, is it's military. It's us. It's not ETs.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have the ability to walk through walls and close doors and then, do whatever they want.
And they do. And the CIA has so much as released their documents that have been declassified that literally talk about psionic abilities that allow them to walk through walls. And that's not a conspiracy theory anymore.
Right.
So we have to start taking this stuff seriously. They have the directed energy weapons. We know about that. They had a heart attack gun, for God's sakes. I mean, they were literally that. You can go research that on Google. They had a gun that you point at somebody and it would shoot a frequency into their chest and give them a heart attack. I mean, that was decades ago. We can only imagine the capabilities they have now. They could probably phase into your home and phase back out like on Star Trek. You know what I mean?
It's hard to fathom that, but it's
Right.
real, folks. It's really happening. Wow. Geez, we are almost out of time. So promote whatever you want, Tyler, your book, documentaries, whatever.
So I'll just encourage people to go over to our Rumble channel, Journey to Truth podcast on Rumble, where they can find the documentary Cahokia Mounds. We really were trying to get that thing out. I was trying to get it on Amazon. I kept hitting roadblocks. They weren't accepting the file, whatever. So it's not there, but I encourage everyone to go check that out, share it with their friends. We have a website, journeytotruth.online, where you can find everything we do. Everything we do, including a new monthly newsletter and our documentaries, our conferences, our webinars, which we do on our Patreon. We have a lot going on. So
yes, you do.
It's become a full-time job, but it's worth it, and it's paying off, and we're really excited about it. So, and then I want to encourage everyone to come out to the XCon conference, October 11th through the 13th, because last year it was amazing. It's at a haunted hotel. I'm really excited to give this presentation on the history of the secret space program. And, Margie throws on an amazing event, and I think it's going to certainly be bigger this year, and it's going to keep growing. So if anyone's in the area, Springfield, Missouri, come on out and hang out with us. Grab a ticket because it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be good. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to hearing your talk. And what about Journey to Truth Conference for next year? What are your plans with that?
That's going to be again in Grafton, Illinois. We're not publicly disclosing the dates yet because we have to get some stuff locked in on the back end, but it is confirmed. It is happening. It's going to be in May of 2025 in Grafton, Illinois, at the Pure Marquette Lodge, same place it's been. So that is, we're really excited about that, and it's just been growing and growing for us too, and it's a lot of fun. That place is beautiful.
It sure is, and it's got a very special energy there. That's for sure. It's a wonderful place. I'm glad you found that. And I'm looking forward to being a vendor there next year.
Yeah. We look forward to having you back. It's going to be a great time.
Definitely. Thank you so much for being on the show with me tonight. And I will see you in October.
Yeah. See you later. Thank you for having me on. This was fun.
Thanks, Tyler. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, we are up on a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Mindy Tautfest.
The Onyx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Onyx Network website at onyxnetwork.com. That's onyxnetwork.com. This September 6th through the 13th, join with like-minded souls in the experience of a lifetime on the Royal Caribbean Ovation of the Seas as we travel from Seattle to Alaska. Internationally renowned researchers, investigators, experiencers, authors, holistic healers, contactees, spiritual luminaries will sail on an extraordinary voyage of transformation. This cruise will explore UFOs, alien contact, cover-ups, ancient mysteries, the paranormal, holistic healing, and spirituality. Experience engaging lectures, one-on-one sessions, private, custom-tailored excursions, and a nightly UFO watch. The cruise is booking up fast. Go to contactatsea.com and be sure to mention the Onyx Network when you book. That's contactatsea.com or phone 336-749-1219. That's 336-749-1219.
The Onyx Network annual XCon is just around the corner, so get your tickets now. XCon is being held October 11th to the 13th, 2024 at the very haunted Oasis Hotel and Convention Center in Springfield, Missouri. Speakers include Scott Nelson, Peter Robbins, Micah Hanks, Mindy Tautfest, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Dan Terry, Michelle Roos, and more, presenting UFOs, cryptids, and the paranormal. Attend a live ghost hunt and workshops at the hotel, and we're having the annual awards banquet and Mad Hatter costume party. You don't want to miss this conference. Visit unxnetwork.com to register today. That's unxnetwork.com. Welcome back to Onyx News. I'm your host, Margie Kay, and this evening for the second half, I have my good friend, Mindy Tautfest, with me. Mindy is a UFO investigator. She's a writer. She's an experiencer and a speaker and lots of things. And welcome to the program, Mindy.
Thank you, Margie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. You are a busy lady, as usual.
Oh yeah, and it's funny. I'll actually be speaking this year on my book from last year, since we ended up having to put it off. And in the past year, there's been so much that's transpired that I'll be ready for next year. I feel like I'm a year behind.
That happens to the best of us. It's hard to get this stuff investigated and then written down and studied and out there. It takes longer than we think.
Yeah, it does. Well, and thank God I have you, because as I've been rolling out new information and new investigations and everything that's been transpiring, I have you right there, able to publish new books and put them out to the public. And I'm really excited about the one that we're working on now, that we just started working on and just started speaking about. I'm sure we'll get into that here in just a bit.
Yes, we will. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about your book, Dying to Meet Them, and then, of course, your talk at XCon. So
Absolutely.
kind of give us an overview of the book.
Right. Well, the book is Dying to Meet Them, One Woman's Incredible Journey from NDE to UAP. And it chronicles my near-death experience that I had back in November of 2016. And it was actually on election day between Trump and Hillary. And I had come out of the shower. I kind of had a little bit of weirdness that morning. I had a little bit of swelling in my face and stuff. And I knew something was a little bit off. And by that afternoon, I was waiting for my husband and kids to come home. And that's when I heard the loud explosion go off in my head. And I ended up crossing over to what I now know as the void. And being a Southern Baptist pastor's wife and a nurse, that wasn't something that I was familiar with, especially with the Western mindset. I kind of was expecting to see Jesus and the tunnel of light and, friends and loved ones to greet me. And that didn't end up happening for me. And it was something very hard to process while over there. When I first went over there, and I'll get into this more in depth during the talk at XCon, but when I was there, the void didn't offer any ill will towards me. When I was there, I was mainly curious. It was the amount of time that seemed to pass that I was there that I really started getting anxious and fearful, because I thought that I was stuck there by myself forever. And I had some deep soul searching while there. And eventually an entity came up to me and told me, "You're not going to be here forever." And it comforted me immediately. And as he told me this, we started sailing off to the left, and he showed me something which he revealed to me as the fabric of humanity. And it just put off beautiful light. And I mean, it looked like a nebula, and just immense love. And I wanted to go to it. And he said, no, that's not for you, and led me back to my body. And I kind of was inserted with a bang, and I like rebooted almost like a computer whenever I came back to. And that's the short of it.
Right. The short story.
Yeah. It is. It profoundly changed everything about me, as you know. I mean, following that, I had another episode, which we found out what I had was a vertebral artery dissection, which is kind of a cross between a stroke and a brain aneurysm. And I ended up back in the hospital a few years later. And really at that point, I was so weak. I mean, my blood pressure is 40/20. And I mean, I was in the neuro step down, and we were making funeral arrangements, and we had young kids. And, my sweet husband turns to me and says, "Well, what do you want to do with the time that we have?" And I said, "I want to go to Roswell." And that really kind of changed everything for me, because that's where I met Kathleen Martin, and she brought back to memory the Mutual UFO Network and got involved there. And as you know, it has been nonstop ever since.
Oh, yes. And anytime they find a volunteer, they will utilize you to the fullest.
Oh, yeah, they will. Well, and I mean, I have been so grateful, because it's always been a dream of mine. From being a very young child, I've always had an interest in UFOs, even though I wasn't a UFO experiencer. I was more of a paranormal experiencer. I had, ghostly visits, spiritual visits, and, kind of interaction with other realms. And I don't know where the fascination with UFOs came from, but it was always front and center. And I'm sure you have your own theories on that, Margie.
Yeah, we won't discuss that.
Yeah. But it fascinated me. As I got more involved with MUFON, I joined as a field investigator in 2019. And then within a year, I was state director. And then within a couple of years after that, I was moved up to revamping the whole MUFON University and doing Dean of MUFON University, and working as the director of training for MUFON. And I have just enjoyed every minute of it, but they keep me busy.
Yeah. And no money either. It's all volunteer.
It is, but it's
But,
it's a
a big
passion.
organization like that, they have to have volunteers or it just isn't gonna run.
Right.
So,
Well, and you've
yeah.
got to have the passion behind it.
Mhm.
As I was working as state director, and I had gotten involved with the experiencer resource team, and talking to abductees, that was one of the main things that really kind of led to the writing of the book. Was I started realizing just how much they sounded like me, and I thought, I'm a near death experiencer, but they are sounding a lot like me. And if there is some kind of connection here, someone
Mhm.
smarter than me has definitely come across this before. And I ended up running across a study that Kathleen Martin actually did through MUFON that found 55% of UFO experiencers, actual abductees, have had a near death experience. And
Yes.
in the general population, it's only about 5%. So there is a huge crossover. And in continuing to research, I ended up coming across Dr. Kenneth Ring, who put out the Omega Project back in the early 90s, 1992. He was professor of psychology at the University of Connecticut. And he was a near-death experience researcher and had started IONS with Raymond Moody and Bruce Grayson to really support near-death experiencers.
Mhm.
But a colleague of his gave him a copy of Communion and said, read this. This guy sounds like your near-death experiencers. So the colleague had kind of seen the same similarities I was seeing just a few years back. And in doing that, Dr. Ring said, okay, I'm seeing what you're saying. And he ran a whole battery through his college and was able to come up with a couple of things that he thought were similarities between the UFO experiencers and the near-death experiencers. One being an encounter-prone personality, which tends to be those of us that have had spirit encounters growing up. We've had abductions. We've had connection with other realms. And he really looked at it as a dissociation to the point of excluding your environment. So it's almost like we're able to completely tune out the world around us and absorb ourselves into other realities. And it was really interesting how he did that, because he was able to differentiate between people that were experiencers and people that were just fantasy prone, and there was no overlap in these. Some people are fantasy prone and some people are actually having connections with other realms. The other thing he found was that there was a set of after effects, and that's really what I was picking up on in working with the experiencer team. Was these after effects they run through a lot of us different types of experiencers, where after these kind of encounters we become much more altruistic and we see the bigger picture. And I know for me, the bigger picture was I was returned with almost a view of being inserted into a simulation. And I go into that in my talk. And, chapter 9 of my book covers that very in depth about just all of my, everything I brought back from the void. And I wrote that shortly after the NDE because I did not want to lose all of the information that I had returned with, really. And it's interesting whenever you read through it, it has a whole different feel than the rest of the book, because Mindy Tautfest is not that smart. so some of the things that I wrote in there, I look back now years later and I'm blown away. I can't believe that came from my hand, because those aren't thoughts that I normally ruminate on. That was just things that I had completely impressed on me with the returning here. It took me a couple of years to really fully reintegrate into this reality, because I knew the reality of the void. I knew my pure existence, and to be returned here in this clunky body, it took some getting used to really get my spirit back in my body and back in this reality.
Well, the book is extremely detailed and thorough, and anybody who wants to know about the NDE experience, and then also other experiences with interdimensional beings, you know, things that are a little bit over the edge. You want to know what reality is? It's all there in the book. And it was very well done. And I just, I jumped at the chance to publish it because I didn't have to edit anything. Thank you so much, Mindy. There are like 2 words that needed to be, a little bit different.
Yeah.
But, so you're a good writer on top of it.
Well, thank you.
So I highly recommend the book. And so let's get into now. And of course, you're going to be talking about that at XCon. And we're going to have a good time at XCon because there's a lot going on there.
Oh, yeah. And you're putting me in a room with Debbie. I hope she's ready.
Oh, she's ready. She's bringing her wine bottle. I know.
Oh,
Debbie.
yeah.
Yeah. You'll be having a good time with her.
Uh-huh.
I might come visit you guys in your room.
Absolutely.
We'll drink a little bit of wine.
Uh-huh.
So you've got a really big project that you've been working on for a while, and things are coming to fruition. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. Like I said, this is all, a lot of this is falling in place just over this last weekend. So in 2021, I investigated a case for MUFON, and it's come to be known as the Miracle Mountain Schoolyard encounter. And I've spoken with you about it before on previous shows, but it was basically just a schoolhouse encounter here in Oklahoma back in the mid 70s. And there was a whole group of children outside, saw this UFO. It came very darn close to them, hovered right over them for a couple of hours. And they ended up inside the house, and they were seeing entities out their windows. They ended up staying in the living room all together overnight. And that next morning, the teacher took them and they went on a field trip to go look for signs of the UFO because it had taken off at one point and then settled about a mile away, still on their property. They had like 6,000 acres or something out there. And so they went to go look for signs of it, and they didn't find anything. But on returning, they ended up finding out that the meat locker had been completely emptied out of processed beef, which is just insane because you think of like cattle mutilations, and here we processed beef that was missing. But the next day it was actually returned. And so the head guy of the school there, it was a kind of like a family, run school. And he took it out and burned it all and refused to let them eat it. So this ended up being a really big case, and it really lined up with a lot of the other schoolyard encounters that were happening there in the 60s and 70s. And so in researching that, I finished up that case. I spent about a year working on that case and really interviewing all of the witnesses and getting all the information I could on it, and closed it out and decided, well, being the state director of Oklahoma, I should probably have some better understanding of some of the previous sightings and stuff here in Oklahoma. Well, in researching it, I kept coming across a name, Hayden Hughes. And living here my whole life, I had not heard of Hayden Hughes. And being interested in UFOs all my life, I had not heard of Hayden Hughes. So I started digging, and I thought, okay, I need to get a hold of this guy, because he was actually out there around that area during the mid 70s and late 60s, where the schoolyard encounter had happened. And so I went to look up how to get a hold of him and ended up getting in touch with his widow, Bonnie. He had passed in 2017, but thankfully she had saved all of his files. And I said, well, I'd really like, if you don't mind, looking through them and see if there's anything that might line up with this case that I worked last year for MUFON. And she said, oh yeah, you can have them. So that next morning, I wasted no time. That next morning, drove out to the storage unit and loaded up about 15 boxes of stuff. And I instantly started digging through. Hayden ran a modeling company, so some of his modeling stuff was mixed in and some of his personal effects. And I finally got it down to about 5 or 6 banker boxes full of stuff. And these are all individual investigations. These are recordings and audio cassettes. There's Betty Andreasen on there, a lie detector from her.
Wow.
There is unreleased audio from his interview with her. There's Dan Fry from White Sands, unreleased audio from him. And one of the biggest one that Hayden did was Heaven's Gate. And Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles were coming out and visiting the International UFO Bureau that Hayden ran back in the 70s. And they came out and spoke with him multiple times. Him and Brad Steiger worked together as partners. And they ended up putting out a book called Inside Heaven's Gate, talking about all their time with them. But in going through all of his records, we now have unreleased audio of Marshall Applewhite. We have the original recruitment video from Marshall Applewhite. We have a lie detector from him and Bonnie Nettles. And so there's a lot to do with the Heaven's Gate cult that's never been released from his records that we've now, just over this weekend, we have everything digitized. And so now we're going to start releasing it. Part of it, most of it is going to be on Project Aquarius website through MUFON, which people can get a library card. They don't have to be a member of MUFON, but they can get a library card for $50 and be able to access not only Hayden's files, but the Leonard Stringfield files. There's all kinds of newspaper clippings, photo gallery, drawings gallery. There's all kinds of information on there. And what MUFON's doing with Project Aquarius is just, it's never been done. So I'm super excited. One of the things here, if I can hold it up, I'll show you here. One of the things in his library, can you see that?
Yeah.
This is Project Grudge, loose leaf. We think this is straight from Right Pat, because Hayden, he kind of flew under the radar. He was working directly with Right Pat. He helped with the Condon report. I have some of the original report forms from the Condon report. But this here, let me see if I can find one of the pages. And I'll show you here. This copy of Project Grudge actually has taped in addendums.
Oh, wow.
They are physically taped in there, and I don't believe they have ever been released. Maybe some of your audience will be able to verify that. I haven't had time to check yet, but and there's multiple pages with those taped in addendums. I don't know if it's just in my copy or not, but we've got it all digitized, and that'll be put out. We also have the original Jimmy Carter report. You see this back here behind me, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
This is Hayden here. This is a letter from Werner von Braun where he's speaking about his thoughts on UFOs. And so there are so many letters in there that Hayden...
Boy, that's a gold mine.
Knows. It is.
Nobody knew that existed until you found it.
Yes. Well, I mean, there are notes from all kinds of astronauts. I know. I'm trying to think. What is the astronaut that Edgar Mitchell? He wrote about his non-belief in UFOs. So this must have been before he had his encounter. So, I mean, there is going to be a wealth of information put out from the Hayden Hughes collection here pretty darn soon. And a lot of his articles are going to be put into a book that's going to be coming out from UNX.
Yes, UNX Media is going to publish that book. And I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on that because, I'm a UFO junkie, of course, obsessed with the older cases. I just find them to be fascinating. I've been working on several in Missouri, of course, the Piedmont case, which was huge in 1973. But what most people don't know is that it's ongoing. It's still going on today, but the residents don't talk about it because of the media, and people are making fun of them. Do you find that to be the case in Oklahoma? Are there things still going on there?
Oh, absolutely. And especially over in southeastern Oklahoma. There were so many reports right around that small town of Hartshorn. And I'm actually working on a project with releasing some of the information about it, but it's been ongoing. And of course, the large population centers have the most reports that come in: Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Lawton. Down by Lawton is where we see a lot of the cattle mutilations. And that lines up with the one that I worked this last year in Temple, Oklahoma, where we actually got in there within hours of the discovery of the animal and got the DNA. We got all kinds of samples, and our MUFON lab's been working on that. And I gave that presentation there at the MUFON Symposium this year, and we're still waiting on more information to come back on it. But the interesting thing about the temple mutilation was that there was a mini zebu that was found dead 2 days later. And well, I may be fudging on that. It might have been a few days, but it was found a few days after that original cow was found mutilated. And the zebu wasn't mutilated. It appeared to have been dropped, and both of its horns had been broken off at the base. So we have samples from it. We're still waiting for that to be processed. Hopefully it'll tell us a little bit more information about what happened with that one. But it was 2 animals there at the same ranch. And in speaking with the rancher just, a month or so ago, she said that there was actually 5 other animals that were found by her neighbors at that same time that were just never reported. So we know there was a slew going on here in Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, right over the Texas border, right at the same time that Texas had those 8 mutilations down there in their state.
Right. Wasn't that last summer? When was that?
It was in April.
It was in April this year. Okay.
Yeah.
So springtime. Yeah. I remember there was a lot of media coverage about the Texas mutilations, but hardly anything about Oklahoma.
I know. We kind of skirted under the radar, which was awesome, because there were reports that the FBI had come in and shut down any talk there in Texas, and none of the ranchers were willing to talk to any investigators or anything. But Oklahoma, we got right in there.
Yeah.
We got our samples, and we just kept on moving along, and nothing was ever said to us. So we kind of just skirted by with that one, which is good. Hopefully we'll get some good information out of it.
Well, there has typically Oklahoma has been known for strange things happening. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when I was doing research on the Piedmont case, that UFO flap was actually across the southern United States, and Oklahoma would have been included in that in 73, 74.
Now I need to go back and look at some of these records. I know, and I haven't had time to read everything in depth. I've kind of skirted everything that I have from Hayden, but I know that there was a red alert that was put out by Tinker Air Force Base and by NORAD. And there's actual radar returns. People were talking about having crossover on their telephone lines and hearing red alert put out for a couple of objects that we're seeing. That may line up with that Piedmont. And I know that Hayden has some writings on Piedmont that I need to get to you and get in your hands.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yes, I've got a lot of stuff on the Aurora crash. I've been trying to get that down to Daniel Allen Jones, because he's taken over the Mars files, and Jim Mars, and Jim was down there doing Aurora. So trying to get him the information from Hayden's collection on Aurora, and really trying to get all this information out there, because hopefully it'll add to our understanding. It's really interesting how I've come across, I seeming to be the person to send archives to.
Obviously, that's your job.
Well, and
I mean, that's your task.
Well, I really enjoy it, because I think that it's so important that we look at these older files and, look at it through the new lens and use our new science to be able to really break down what they had back then and what it may tell us about what we're seeing now. So, I mean, I'm so excited to get this out. I know Tom Bowden is sending me his collection from up in Oregon, and we'll be working on getting all that digitized. I've been working closely with Christopher Jordan from Curious Realm, and I've told you a little bit about what he's doing. He's taking this to a whole new level, where we are creating a website now for all of the Hayden Hughes UFO research, and it'll all be housed there. But it'll also have a Hayden Hughes bot where people can go in and actually talk to Hayden Hughes. All of his writings will be input in there, and so people can ask him a question and it'll be an answer straight from Hayden Hughes.
That's just amazing. I cannot wait to see that. This new technology and AI technology is, well, I think it's fantastic. Of course, you know, there are some bad things with it too, with it not working right sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to have a photograph made or an image made and you tell it what you want. It's not anything like what you want.
It's got 7 fingers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do that. Yeah. Or 3 legs. But Mindy, thank you so much for being on the program tonight. And I am looking forward to hearing your talk in October at XCon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Margie. I'm looking forward to it.
All righty. We'll see you there, and see you folks here again next week, Friday night, 6 p.m. Central.